We've just come through a very difficult recession that's put a lot of pressure on our budget, and we're straining to really keep on providing the kind of services you expect. We are a community with very diverse opinions, and we're asking people to participate to help us get to the very best place we can with our current budget. City Manager John Reese is going to come and tell you about how we got where we are and some of the decisions that are before us that he has shared with both council and our employees. With that information, we hope you will help us make decisions that will keep this a great community to live in.
I'm John Reese, City Manager in Eugene, and we're just going to talk a little bit about the budget and where we've been over the last 5 years. And so I'd like to give just a brief history of the last 5 years leading into where we are today in the conversation that's going forward with the community. Back in 2008, on the eve of the recession, we had a $1 million gap in our general fund, which had really been lingering for many years. Our expenditures were exceeding our revenues on an ongoing basis. And so we had a $1 million gap. We were also anticipating having to absorb $5 million worth of our library levy into the general fund. And we also knew of at least 2 pretty significant PERS increases that were going to occur in the next 4 to 5 years. So all that was on the eve of the recession hit. And what that did for us is it drove down our property tax revenues. Hynex closed, which had a significant impact on property taxes and on the revenues we received from eWeb and Northwest Natural and other utilities. The whole economy started to dampen, so development went flat, which drove down property tax revenue. Our assessed values went down. All of that resulted in what started off as a $1 million gap. By the time we started into the winter of 2008 into 2009, it had grown to $12 million. Now, our general fund is about $125 million. And so this was about 10% of our general fund now had expenses higher than revenues. So what we did as an organization, we reacted and responded very quickly. We made the assumption that this was going to be a long-term issue. It wasn't just a quick year-to-year issue. And so we focused on structurally needing to balance our budget, which means you need to get rid of those ongoing expenses. So we did a lot of things. We received hundreds of ideas from employees, and we implemented scores of those. We significantly reduced overtime. We did some significant reorganizations inside our organization. Fire merger is one of those with Springfield, again saving money and increasing our operations. Not only has operations increased, but we've also reduced our costs. Throughout all of this, what we said is we want to minimize our impact on the services out into the community while we're making those structural changes. We did some other kinds of things. We started to reduce our organizational footprint, not only positions, but we also started to reduce the size of our fleet, the amount of our facility needs, our energy use. So we continued to do that to really drive down our expenses as we went. We got through that first year, but then the recession didn't stop. You might remember we still had these ongoing driving down of the economy, and so the next year we had another $5 million we needed to deal with. The year after that, we had another $2.8 million. And in the following year, we had another $4 million. And so by the time we were about 4 years into the recession, we had an accumulated $24 million gap in our general fund, which we need to continually to address. And we did every year. Every year we said, we're going to live within our means. And we did that by driving down our expenses. And we're going to maintain services. And so what you saw through this entire period is our budget in the general fund decreased. Our annual average expenses prior to the recession grew at a little over 6% per year. After the recession hit, we drove down those costs to 0.6% per year. And that was while absorbing the library levy and significant PERS increases. So we did a great job doing that. Throughout that time, we also said we wanted to invest in the community. So we added police officers downtown. We added jail capacity. We added a second Cahoots vehicle. We continued to invest in economic development, particularly in our loan program. We recognized that a lot of people in this community were in a difficult situation, so we increased our social service investment. So we said we needed to drive down the cost and continue to invest in the community. Right now, we have fewer positions per capita than we have had in over 35 years in this community. Again, shrinking the organizational footprint in multiple ways is the key as we continue to drive forward with this. A couple other things that we did through this period, we brought our city attorneys in-house. Service levels have gone up, but we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars as we've done that. We supported the Olympic trials. We created a new model for animal services, partnering with nonprofit agency in which, again, our services are as good or better, and at the same time, we're driving down costs. We've changed the way we are fielding technology and software and saving money around those kinds of things. I mentioned we're continuing to invest in the community, and we are throughout this entire period. Our police budget actually has increased. We've added police officers, we've added jail capacity, we've added a Cahoots vehicle throughout this entire time. Our fire department has essentially remained neutral, in part because of that fire merger. Public Works, our parks maintenance has been about the same. In our central services, our library, recreation, and cultural services, and our planning and development have decreased in their budgets. So through that time, we've done a lot. We've reduced 20% of the expenses in our general fund. We've maintained a prudent savings account just so we can help weather the little peaks and valleys as we go through. Eliminated over 100 positions. Employees have achieved savings and efficiencies across the organization in multiple ways. I mentioned we've continued to invest in the community, and we've tried to minimize impacts on community services. But that brings us to this last year. The recession didn't stop. And so we continue to have to meet gaps and fill gaps. And so this last year, we had another $5.2 million gap. We have done what we can do. We will continue to look for operational efficiencies, but much and most of the fat has already been rendered. So the question is given that there are going to be some significant impacts on services, so how are we going to try to choose and address those? In trying to decide what it is that we would change service levels in the organization, what we said is we still want to maintain and balance the goals and achieve the goals and the outcomes the council has said that are important to us. So we took that into consideration. We also said, are there some things that can be reduced rather than eliminated? An example of that is our downtown library. We didn't say let's close the library. The proposal was we can reduce it by 1 day a week. So we're still needing to provide that kind of service to people in the community, but is there opportunities to reduce those? Could they realistically be provided by others, although maybe not at the same level we would expect or would hope for? Some of our social services are like that. Other agencies provide those. We provide funding for that, but it is an opportunity to reduce services there could be. Could they be efficiently restored if funding becomes available? In other words, can we sort of buy them back? The branch libraries could be an example of that. A pool could be an example of that. We also said if services that pay for themselves we're not including. So we have recreation programs that are self-funded. And so if we were to reduce or eliminate those, the general fund would actually not see any benefit to that because we're actually covering the costs on those. And then finally, it's important that the reductions actually occurred in the general fund. If we do something in the airport fund that creates savings, which we continually want to do, that's good, but it doesn't impact this $5.2 million gap. So where we are right now, we've filled a $5.2 million gap deficit in our general fund. It's an ongoing deficit, but we filled it with one-time money. So the challenge is how do we actually close that deficit with ongoing resources? And that's what the Budget Committee is looking to figure out.
As volunteer citizen members of the Budget Committee, we see how complicated the city's budget is. We also know how challenging it is to sort through the wide variety of opinions, priorities, and goals of our citizens to come to consensus about what services to fund, how to fund them, and at what levels. We want to help the public understand the budget issues that we face. As a result of our process, we hope to build a stronger shared base of understanding of the budget problem, and we hope that this understanding will make the choices, decisions, and impacts before us clearer, even if the choices are not any easier. That's why the Budget Committee wants to get community input and feedback in the process, and why it's important for you as a citizen to get your voice into the mix.